fit my whole life into 2 suitcases? Do I plan on becoming a US citizen? And why is my English so good? You guys had a lot of questions after my last video about moving from Germany to the US at 22, and here are my answers. Hallo, Servus, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Feli. I'm originally from Munich, Germany, but I've been living here in Cincinnati, Ohio, on and off since 2016. And in my last video, I talked about what this on and off situation looked like in detail and how and why I ended up in the US. So if you haven't seen that video yet, I'm gonna link it up here for you and in the info box below. But today I wanna answer all of the follow-up questions that you guys had for me, both in the YouTube comments, but also on Instagram. And I'd say let's start with one of the most commonly asked questions, if not the most asked question after that video, and that is, how did I learn to speak English so well? And maybe I'll make a whole video about this topic at some point, but the short answer is that I started learning English in school in 5th grade. It's usually mandatory in Germany, and most students start even earlier nowadays in elementary school. So I had English class from 5th through 12th grade in school, and then maybe around the age of 16 or 17 or so, I started watching American TV shows in English occasionally. And I specifically remember that How I Met Your Mother was coming out with a new season, which is one of my all-time favorite TV shows, if not my top one favorite TV show, and the German dubbed version was still taking a few more months, but I couldn't wait any longer. I wanted to know how it continues, so then I just went ahead and watched the original instead. So that definitely helped, and then of course we're surrounded by a lot of English-speaking music in Germany, mainly American music, so you just hear English a lot, but then the final push for me was definitely when I moved here. I mean, in the last video I told you about my test score of the TOEFL English test that I had to take before I came here on my exchange semester, and I did get a score of 111 of 120, so my English was already pretty good, but I definitely didn't understand everything when I first came here, like especially when it came to certain colloquialisms, slang, expressions, idioms, or even just like specific vocab that was particular to a certain situation that I wasn't really familiar with from my textbooks or How I Met Your Mother. So I definitely learned a lot during those first few months. I picked out a few more comments about this topic, so let's see. Jesse Oaks said, I have known a number of immigrants from Germany, and all of them are permanent residents of the US. All of them still have a slight moderate German accent. I believe that you could pass for a US-born resident and not an immigrant. I wonder what you did to learn English with an American accent. You don't have a British accent like a lot of foreign nationals. Thank you, first of all. I know that I definitely do have an accent. It might just not be as strong as some other people's accent, but I also actually know a lot of other Germans who moved to the US around a similar age as I did, and they have even less of an accent than I do. So I'm definitely not an exception, and a lot of these other Germans that I know could pass as a native speaker even more than I can, because I know that I have a slight accent still, and that's probably the reason why, because to answer your question, what did I do to lose my German accent? Nothing, really. And that's also probably why I don't sound perfect, because I never sat down and tried to lose my German accent. It happened naturally by being in this country and being surrounded by this accent. I just picked up on it naturally, and it was never really my goal to lose my accent, and I'm not ashamed of my accent or anything like that. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to lose your accent, but I guess I was just honestly too lazy to actively try and practice my pronunciation. In regards to the comment with the British pronunciation, we did actually learn more British English in school. For the longest time, we were only allowed to use British spelling, and everything that we learned from our textbook was British pronunciation. But as I said, I was more later on surrounded by American pronunciation from TV shows. I personally always liked it better. I know that a lot of people like British pronunciation much better. I didn't. And most of the music that we hear in Germany also has more of an American accent. Even British artists, you guys probably know this, often when they sing more with an American accent, because supposedly it's easier to sing songs with an American accent. So that's why I don't really have a British accent, and I don't think I really did when I came here. This comment also asked, I know you've addressed the topic in a previous post, but I'm still left wondering if you had much of a German accent when you arrived in Cincinnati, either as a student or as a German language teacher. Well, so I arrived here first in 10th grade when I was 16 for 2 weeks, and then I came here when I was 22, as I said in the last video, so I was a student. And I definitely did have a stronger German accent, or just accent in general. And since I studied electronic media, I know that there were a few projects for school that included a voiceover from me. So let me see if I can find any of those old projects, and then maybe you can hear what my accent sounded like at the time. Beer, brown hair, and they like American culture? Yes, you're right. This is about Germans and how Americans picture them. But do really all Germans love beer, and are they reserved?
It's definitely a stereotype. That's it.
Have you considered becoming a US citizen? I know that there was also a question if I'm already a citizen, and the answer to that is no. I am only a German citizen and an American permanent resident, or legal permanent resident. I have a green card. Have I considered it? Yes, but currently I am not eligible yet. So yeah, I guess I'll think about it more whenever it's time. I have to wait until I have lived with that permanent residency in the US for 5 years, which for me would be in August of 2024. So it's still a little bit down the road. I also have to fulfill certain requirements, which I think I will at the time, but you know, we'll see. So yeah, if the time comes and I can apply for it, then I will certainly consider it. I just have to make sure that I contact the German government first and apply for dual citizenship with them, because I would never give up my German citizenship. So only if they grant me dual citizenship is when I would then apply for American citizenship. But at the same time, it's not like I'm impatiently waiting for that day that I can finally become an American citizen, because as long as I have my green card, that's all I need really. Like, it gives me all the rights and freedoms that I need for a happy life here, except that I can't vote, but that's fine with me. So, you know, it's not like a huge topic in my mind. Michelle asked, how do your parents feel about living so far away? I'm a parent and I'm struggling because I want to move 2 hours away from my daughters. Have they always been good about you living so far? Do they try to get you to come home? I guess you would have to ask them, but as far as I know, it's not that big of a deal for them. I mean, it definitely sucks that we can't see each other a lot, but they always say that it's good that at least they get to see me on YouTube and in the podcast all the time, and they do watch all of my videos and episodes. And of course, we talk on the phone regularly or FaceTime. And honestly, if I had moved somewhere else in Germany, like let's say Northern Germany, Berlin, Hamburg, or something like that, then we might not see each other that much more either, because I usually see them at least twice a year. So most of the time, it honestly feels like a normal parents-children living distance. I mean, in the US, if like people move from the East Coast to the West Coast, that's like almost as crazy as me being over here across the Atlantic. Obviously, it costs a little bit more to get home to Germany or for them to come here, and it's definitely a longer trip, but it doesn't really feel that much different than being an 8-hour drive away, to me at least. And do they try to get me to come home? No, they've never tried that. They literally support me in everything I do. So I'm very lucky in that regard. And I think they know that this was the right choice for me. And if anything, they were happy for all these steps that fell into place for me. So when I was accepted to my master's degree, they were happy. When I got the green card, when I won the green card lottery, they were happy for me. When I bought the house, they were happy for me. So it's not something that they feel negatively about. A couple similar questions were, war es einfach, so weit von meinen Eltern entfernt zu sein? Was it easy to be so far away from my parents? And also, wie haben deine Freunde und Familie deinen Umzug wahrgenommen? How did your friends and family perceive your move, or what did they think about your move? I kind of explained that in the last video, but since my move was such a gradual thing, like I didn't just, have this moment where I packed all my stuff and I was like, I'm moving to the US and I don't know when I'm coming back, bye-bye. But it was more like I went on an exchange semester for 5 months, came back home. Went to do an internship, came back home. Went to get my master's, and then after that I wasn't quite sure if I was coming home. I ended up not really coming home because I then ended up getting my green card, which was cool. But yeah, that moment just didn't really exist. So if anything, like people would ask me periodically, so are you planning on staying there permanently now? Have you officially moved abroad now? And I was always just like, I don't know, we'll see. For now I'm here, or for now I'm over there in the US, but I don't remember a single person in my life having like a negative reaction to it. If anything, of course, like people are maybe a little sad, like, oh, that sucks, we won't be able to see each other. But I don't really remember anyone, at least nobody told me to my face, that they didn't support that or thought it was a bad idea. Did you visit any of our national parks? Yellowstone, Yosemite, Grand Canyon, etc. I mentioned this in the last video also, that I was lucky enough to go on a few road trips through the US with my family. And on a road trip in 2011, we went to the Grand Canyon, Bryce Canyon, Monument Valley, Antelope Canyon, I don't know if that's considered a national park, Zion Canyon, so I've seen all those. I've also been to the Smoky Mountains, I've been to the Shenandoah National Park. I didn't quite make it to Joshua Tree Park, but I did see some Joshua trees when we drove from Las Vegas to LA with my friends 2 years ago. Like, we stopped on the way and got out of the car and walked in this like huge area with Joshua trees. I don't know if that was also considered a national park. Then I also remember actually on a road trip with my family, we did see redwoods, but I don't remember if it was in one of those national parks, but I have not been to Yellowstone or Yosemite yet. So those are definitely on my list, together with parks like Arches National Park. I really want to see that. I really want to see that sea salt desert or whatever it's called. So yeah, there's definitely still a lot to see. Now, the question of all questions, how did you manage to pack your entire life in just 2 suitcases? Daisy Out and About also asked on Instagram, did you only bring suitcases or did you also ship some larger items or extra stuff? And what did you bring? So for my exchange semester, I brought 2 checked bags, so 2 suitcases, which meant that I had to pay extra for the second one. And I said in the last video that I had 1 personal item, but actually if you take a closer look at that picture, you can actually see that I had 2 personal items, a backpack and a handbag. So I guess that was a wrong statement by me in the last video. So 2 suitcases and 2 personal items. I didn't have a carry-on suitcase on my way there, but I actually did have one when I came back after that semester abroad. And to answer the question of how I packed my whole life into 2 suitcases, the answer is actually that I didn't, because it was just a 5-month exchange semester. I did try to limit everything I packed as much as I could. It was a little bit difficult because that fall semester that I was here for started in August and then ended in December, which basically meant that I had to cover everything from like 35-degree summer weather to fall and then also winter weather, which in Cincinnati is freezing and can also include snow. So it was kind of difficult to bring something for like each of those seasons, but you know, I just made sure that I only brought what I actually wore regularly and then just like limited down to like 1 item per occasion. So only 1 winter coat, 1 pair of boots, 1 pair of sandals, etc. Because that's really all you need. And it doesn't matter if you just keep wearing the same boots every day for like a month. Nobody cares. Then of course I brought my electronics, I brought important documents, I brought German adapters for the outlets and also a German power strip. That's actually very helpful. If you just bring like a power strip, then you don't need as many adapters. But a lot of the other stuff I actually just bought here. So like when I came here, I bought towels, I bought a set of bedding, I bought a hair straightener and hair dryer, since the German ones don't usually do that well with the different voltage here anyway. So, you know, that's kind of the answer, is that you don't need to bring your whole life here. And you don't actually need that much for like 5 months. And again, I didn't really know I was gonna come back here. After that semester, I did leave a bunch of those things here in Cincinnati with my boyfriend at the time, because I was hoping I would be able to come back. But I also sold a bunch of stuff, and then when I ended up coming back here, I had to rebuy it. And then over time, I did bring a few more things over from Germany every time I went back and forth. But most of the stuff that I have now, and it's kind of insane how much I have, if you think about it, that I started out with 2 suitcases in 2016. Most of this stuff I just bought over time. Hast du noch Heimweh? Do you still feel homesick? I would answer that with jein, yes and no, because it's not really like I literally feel sick, like I'm crying myself to sleep at night, but of course I do miss my home, and there are definitely moments, like on birthdays for example, or when people I care about are going through tough times, or when there's parties or something that I'm missing, where I definitely wish I could just teleport home for a day or 2. But I don't really have super strong homesickness in that sense, and I actually never really had that. Maybe the first 1 or 2 weeks that I was here on that exchange semester, I felt that a little bit, but I don't remember really, you know, feeling desperate and crying about it. And there's nothing wrong if you do, but I luckily never really went through that at all. What I also miss, and I don't know if you could classify this as like homesickness, but I sometimes miss my culture. I sometimes, when I'm here and I live my everyday life here, I miss German directness, I miss German honesty, reliability, etc. So like, you know, sometimes I definitely wish that I could handle certain things in Germany or with a German company or a German person. But then of course there's many situations where I'm like, I love being here. I love that this is in the US right now. So like ideally, if I could put together a perfect world for me, it would be a wild mix of the 2 cultures. But yeah, that doesn't really, I guess, count as homesickness. Warst du in der Schule / als Teenie ein USA-Fangirl? So were you a USA fangirl in school or as a teenager? And this is actually a funny question because I know a lot of those people and I was totally not one of them. Like, I didn't really have a relationship to the US as a country. My parents had been to the US before, but not with us as children. So the first time I actually came here was at the age of 16. And as I said in my last video, that was kind of more of a coincidence. So it wasn't like a super strong desire that I had to go to the US. And I didn't really have a lot of opinions about the US. I mean, I didn't really feel particularly positive or negative about this country. Of course, I was exposed to American pop culture and celebrities, movies, and all of those things, but I never really had that craving of moving to the US when I was a grown-up. I didn't have that, big dream, but here I am. Okay, so a lot of you guys wanted to know how you could do the same thing that I did, but in reverse. So like, how could you move from the US to Germany or to another European country? And a lot of you also asked, since I introduced ATC in the last video, who helps students from all over the world to go to college in the US, if I know of any companies who do the same thing with going to Germany. I personally don't know of any companies who do that, but if you guys do, please put it in the comments below, help each other out. I do know of some other helpful resources, such as Simple Germany, for example, run by Jen and Yvonne. They have a really helpful website with everything that internationals need to know to get settled in Germany, and they also have a YouTube channel. And of course, all of the other YouTube channels or TikTok pages or Instagram pages by Americans who moved to Germany can be helpful as well. Just hearing about their stories, how they did it, get some advice from them. So I'll put a few of those on the screen for you, but there are also many, many more than just these, but these are some that came to mind. How hard was it to switch social systems, as in healthcare, etc.? For me personally, I would have to say that it wasn't hard at all, but I also feel like I didn't really switch. Like, I was a student for the most part, and then I was self-employed, and I had German healthcare for the most part. There was only 1 year when I was on American healthcare through the university, but other than that, I was always insured with a German expat insurance for health insurance. And since I'm self-employed, I didn't really have to deal with employer benefits and things like that, but it's definitely a different situation for regular employees and, people who are full-on involved in the system. But I guess I'm not really that involved in the system, if that makes sense. That sounds like a bad thing, but I just didn't really have to deal with it a whole lot. Now, I think these questions were asked before I answered it in my last video, but I thought these were really funny. Why Ohio? It's one of those states I'd never want to live in. Flat and nothing too exciting. Or like, why that very boring part of the US? Now again, I did talk about why I like living in Cincinnati in the last video, but what's really funny about this first one, about it's flat and nothing too exciting, is that Cincinnati is actually anything but flat. It's actually a very hilly city, and when my parents first came here, they said something like, oh, this is like San Francisco. We didn't know everything was gonna be so steep here. Of course, most of Ohio is actually very flat, but Cincinnati is at the very southern part of Ohio, and yeah, just not flat and boring. Okay, so Victualia asked about the Lebenshaltungskosten in Cincinnati, so the living expenses for Cincinnati. And generally speaking, the US has higher living expenses than Germany on average, but of course it heavily depends on which place in the US you're comparing to which place in Germany. So I just Googled it, and I'm not saying these are reliable sources, but the first results that are popping up say that in Cincinnati, it costs about $990 per person per month without rent, and for Munich it would be around 500 euros per person without rent. And the dollar and the euro aren't that far apart, so according to this, Munich would actually be way cheaper than Cincinnati. And in my experience, I can just tell you that food is much more expensive in the US. Gas is generally cheaper in the US. Rent has actually gone up like crazy in Cincinnati, but for US standards is still relatively affordable. It says here that it's about 30% cheaper than Seattle, for example, and 5% lower than the national average. But of course, it always depends on what your monthly expenses are, what your living situation is like, etc. If you want to learn more about that, I can actually recommend this video by the Black Forest family, because they actually sat down and did the math and compared whether a person in Germany or in the US ends up with more money in the end after expenses, taxes, health insurance costs, etc. So that's very interesting. Okay, this next question I actually found kind of funny. Wie viel hast du zugenommen in den Staaten? So how much weight did you gain in the States? I guess this question could be considered inappropriate or rude, but I'm actually fine with it, because I know that this is actually a phenomenon that you can see when Americans move to Europe, that they lose weight without without actively trying, and vice versa. When people from other parts of the world move to the US, they gain weight. For me personally, I definitely gained some weight since I was 22, but I don't think all of that is directly connected to me living in the US. During my first time here, during those 5 months of my exchange semester, I don't think I gained any weight, to be honest. And it's probably because for the most part, I kept up that same lifestyle that I had in Munich. I cooked at home for the most part, and I made sure that I cooked healthy. I walked a lot. I mean, I didn't ride my bike anymore as I did in Munich, but I just walked around campus a lot, and that's long distances in the US. And I walked all through the neighborhood because I didn't have a car. So yeah, it's not like I came to the US and then just like exploded. Was there ever a time you felt unwelcomed in the US? By the way, your videos are awesome. Well, thank you first of all. And to answer your question, I would have to say no. I don't really remember ever feeling unwelcomed in real life, at least. On the internet, of course, that's a whole different story. There's definitely lots of comments and messages on the internet of people saying I should go back where I came from, but that's just normal on the internet, and I don't really care about that, and that doesn't make me feel unwelcomed, because those are just clowns. But in real life, no. So that's a really cool thing, actually. I never thought about that. Well, maybe at the border control when you enter the US. I've definitely had situations there where I felt like I was unwelcomed by the border control officers. I've also been pulled out into secondary inspection before, and they're not necessarily nice to you in those situations, but I guess that's just their job. What's also really funny about those comments that I get is that I feel like I get both extremes. So like sometimes people will say things like, all you do on your channel is hate on the US and you just think that everything in Germany is so much better. Why don't you just go back home then? And then for other videos, like the last one, for example, people will say like, how much money did you get paid to advertise the US like that? And it's like, I don't think that one country is better than the other. I think there are certain aspects that are better about Germany and certain aspects that are better in the US. And that's what my channel is about, comparing those and sharing my personal experiences and opinions on those things. But I'm never trying to convey that everything is better in the US or everything is better in Germany, or I hate the US or I hate Germany. There are things that I love about both countries, and there are things that I hate about both countries. And it's just always hilarious to me when I get like 2 of those comments on the same day, and it's like, well, which one is it? Do I hype up the US or do I hate on the US? Make up your mind. Related to the last question, how do people react when they learn you're from Germany? Compliment your English, etc. This is actually something that I never expected before I came here, but I've never really had a bad reaction when people found out that I was from Germany. As I said, I never felt unwelcomed, and most of the reactions were actually very good. So like most of the time when I say that I'm from Germany, people will be like, oh my god, that's so cool, I've always wanted to go there. And then since Cincinnati has such strong German heritage, a lot of people tell me that they have a German last name, or they tell me about their German heritage, where their family came from in the 1900s, etc. So like most of the time it's very positive reactions. People will ask me about soccer, about Oktoberfest, about German beer, about cars, etc. And yeah, sometimes I definitely also get complimented on my English, or people are like, wait, I would have never been able to tell that you're from Germany. And then I say, well, if you keep listening, you'll hear it eventually. And then they're gonna be like, oh yeah, now that you said it, I do hear it, but I would have never been able to pinpoint it to Germany. Okay, last question for the day. Would you still choose to move to the US in 2023? That's a pretty difficult question, honestly. But if I was 22 right now and my university in Germany offered an exchange program with an American college, I don't see why not, honestly. I don't know if this is what the person who asked this question was getting at, but I feel like the question almost implies that things have gotten worse in this country since 2016. But as I said, I never really decided that I was gonna move to the US permanently. Like I didn't sit down and make this rational decision about which country is the better place to live in. So I don't think that would have even affected my decision. But if anything, I feel like politically, I'd probably be more likely to move here now than in 2016. But aside from that, of course, there are many problems in this country, with this country, things that I see critically about the country. Those problems existed in 2016, they exist now, but I personally don't really think that things have gotten that much worse since 2016. I mean, we have gone through a pandemic and a recession, etc., but those were things that happened all over the world. So yeah, I don't think anything really changed that drastically that my decision would be different nowadays. Okay, that was a pretty deep question to end on, but I hope that this was a satisfying answer, and I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I tried my best to answer as many questions as I could. If you have any more follow-up questions, just put them in the comments below, and I'll try to go through and just answer them in the comments, or maybe in a future video. If If you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, activate the notification bell so that you get notified when I upload my next video. And of course, if you want to support me and my channel beyond that, you can hit the super thanks button underneath the video. You can buy me a coffee or another drink on ko-fi.com/Feli from Germany. And you can even join my Patreon community on patreon.com/Feli from Germany. You can also find me on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, so you can also follow me there. And with that, I hope I'll see you next time. Tschüss!